April 7, 1945. East China Sea. Commander Mitsuru Yoshida stood on the bridge of the battleship Yamato, watching the horizon through his binoculars. For over 3 years, he had served aboard the mightiest warship ever built, armed with 9 46-centimeter Type 94 naval rifles that could hurl 3,220-pound shells over 26 miles. Each gun barrel stretched 69 feet, longer than most patrol boats. The turrets alone weighed 2,774 tons each, heavier than an entire destroyer. These weapons represented the pinnacle of naval engineering, the ultimate expression of battleship supremacy that Japanese naval doctrine promised would guarantee victory. At 12:37 that afternoon, Yoshida spotted them. Not enemy battleships within range of Yamato's massive guns, but tiny specks in the sky growing larger. American carrier planes. In that moment, watching nearly 300 aircraft circle beyond the reach of even his mighty weapons, Yoshida understood with crystalline clarity what his superiors had refused to accept. The age of the battleship was over. Within 2 hours, 386 American aircraft from Task Force 58 would send Yamato to the bottom of the sea. The world's most powerful battleship, built at astronomical cost and kept hidden from American intelligence for years, would fire her main guns in anger at enemy surface targets only once in her entire career. The supreme irony was complete. The naval weapon designed to ensure Japanese victory through superior firepower would die without landing a single decisive blow on an American warship with those magnificent guns. The calculus of modern warfare had shifted, written not in the trajectory of shells, but in the range and payload of carrier aircraft, revealing a truth the Imperial Japanese Navy had desperately tried to ignore. The future belonged to the airplane, not the gun. The genesis of Yamato began with industrial reality and strategic fear. In 1934, Japanese naval planners confronted an uncomfortable truth. The United States possessed 32.2% of global industrial production compared to Japan's mere 3.5%. American shipyards could build 3 warships for every one Japan produced. The Washington Naval Treaty of 1922 had limited Japan to 60% of American battleship tonnage, a ratio Japanese admirals considered a national humiliation. When Japan withdrew from the treaty in 1934, naval designers proposed a radical solution: build individual warships so powerful that one Japanese battleship could defeat multiple American vessels simultaneously. Quality would triumph over quantity. Captain Kikuo Fujimoto's team designed the Yamato class around the largest guns ever mounted on a warship, trusting in the time-honored principle that in naval combat, bigger guns meant certain victory. Construction began at Kure Naval Arsenal on November 4, 1937, shrouded in unprecedented secrecy. Workers were investigated by secret police and sworn to silence. A massive canvas canopy covered the dry dock to prevent aerial photography. The scale defied belief. Kure's dry dock had to be deepened by 1 meter and fitted with gantry cranes capable of lifting 350 tons. When launched on August 8, 1940, Yamato displaced 72,000 tons fully loaded, making her 20% larger than America's newest battleships. Her main battery of 9 46-centimeter guns was deliberately misreported as 40-centimeter weapons to deceive American intelligence. Each gun could fire Type 91 armor-piercing shells, weighing 3,220 pounds, to a range of 42,000 meters. In theory, Yamato could destroy American battleships before they could even return fire. The armor scheme was equally impressive. A main belt up to 410 millimeters thick, inclined at 20 degrees, designed to provide an immunity zone against 46 centimeters shells, her own caliber, at ranges between 20,000 and 30,000 meters. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, despite privately believing that carriers would determine the war's outcome, was overruled by the gun club admirals who dominated Japanese naval thinking. The first disturbing evidence came during the Battle of Midway in June 1942. Yamato served as Admiral Yamamoto's flagship, positioned 300 miles behind the carrier striking force. Despite her massive armament and the most powerful radio equipment in the Japanese fleet, Yamato could only listen helplessly as American carrier aircraft sank 4 Japanese carriers in a single afternoon. The battleship's weapons never fired. She couldn't even see the enemy, let alone engage them. After Midway, younger officers began calling her Hotel Yamato for her luxurious accommodations and distance from actual combat. Throughout 1943, as American forces advanced through the Solomon Islands, Yamato shuttled between Truk and the home islands, burning precious fuel while accomplishing nothing. Her guns remained silent. The ship designed to win decisive battles had become a 72,000-ton symbol of strategic paralysis. The psychology aboard Yamato evolved from pride to frustration to quiet desperation. Ensign Yoshida later recalled the cognitive dissonance of serving aboard the world's mightiest battleship, while reading reports of American carriers striking at will across the Pacific. Officers who had trained their entire careers for decisive gun battles watched the war pass them by. In the wardroom, discussions turned to uncomfortable facts. Yamato's construction had consumed resources equivalent to dozens of destroyers or several aircraft carriers. Each main turret cost as much as a complete destroyer. The ship's fuel consumption was so enormous that she rarely left port. A single sortie could consume 6,000 tons of fuel oil. Meanwhile, American task forces ranged freely across the Pacific, their carriers launching strikes from distances that made battleship guns irrelevant. By 1944, even devoted battleship advocates couldn't ignore reality. American carriers were sinking Japanese warships at ranges far beyond any gun's reach. When Yamato finally fired her main guns at enemy ships during the Battle off Samar on October 25, 1944, the results shattered the mythology of battleship supremacy. Chasing a group of American escort carriers and destroyers, Yamato fired 104 main battery shells over nearly 3 hours. Despite ideal conditions and targets within range, she achieved minimal results with her primary armament. The escort carrier USS Gambier Bay, the only American carrier ever sunk by enemy surface gunfire in World War II, was finished off primarily by cruiser fire, not Yamato's massive shells. Destroyer USS Johnston, though damaged by battleship fire, was ultimately sunk by Japanese destroyers. Most humiliating, Yamato fled when American destroyers launched torpedoes, her officers mistaking the small escort carriers for fleet carriers. The world's most powerful battleship had retreated from opponents a fraction of her size. Commander Ernest Evans of USS Johnston had proven that aggressive tactics and torpedoes could neutralize even the mightiest guns. American intelligence gradually pieced together the truth about Yamato. In February 1944, photo reconnaissance over Truk revealed a battleship of unprecedented size. Photo interpreters at Pearl Harbor correctly estimated 46-centimeter guns and a displacement exceeding 60,000 tons. By April 1945, ultra-intercepts had given Admiral Raymond Spruance complete details of Operation Tengo, Yamato's planned suicide mission to Okinawa. The Americans knew her route, timing, and even her fuel load. More significantly, they understood what Japanese admirals still refused to accept. Battleships without air cover were merely targets. Task Force 58 under Admiral Mark Mitcher had evolved into the most powerful naval striking force in history. By April 1945, it comprised 16 fleet carriers and light carriers operating over 1,000 aircraft. The force could launch more planes in one strike than most nations possessed in their entire air forces. The Americans had turned carrier warfare into industrial production, launching coordinated strikes with hundreds of planes while maintaining continuous fighter cover. The final mission began with delusion, and ended in Catastrophe. On April 5, 1945, Admiral Seiichi Ito received orders for Operation Tengo. Yamato would lead 9 escorts on a one-way mission to Okinawa, beach herself, and become an unsinkable gun battery. The plan allocated only enough fuel for a one-way journey, though sympathetic supply officers secretly provided extra. Emperor Hirohito himself had asked, "What about the Navy?" when told of the Army's plans to defend Okinawa. This suicide mission was the Navy's answer, a gesture more than a strategy. Captain Kosaku Aruga assembled Yamato's crew to explain their fate. Many wept openly. They were to attack the most powerful naval force ever assembled with no air cover, in daylight, along a predictable route. It wasn't a military operation, but a death ritual. Even the mission planners privately admitted the force would never reach Okinawa. The battleship admirals were sending 3,332 men to die to preserve their institutional honor. April 6, 1945. As Yamato departed Tokuyama Harbor, American submarines Threadfin and Hackleback were already waiting. They tracked the force through the night, transmitting position reports in clear text that Yamato's radio operators intercepted. The Japanese knew the Americans knew. It was like watching one's own funeral procession. At dawn on April 7th, American flying boats maintained contact while Mitchell positioned his carriers. The ritual nature of the mission became clear when Yamato fired Sanshiki beehive shells at the scout planes, special anti-aircraft rounds for her main guns that exploded 1,000 meters from the ship, creating clouds of incendiary tubes. The world's most powerful naval rifles, designed to penetrate the thickest armor at extreme ranges, were reduced to firing elaborate fireworks at aircraft that easily evaded them. At 10 a.m., radar detected the first wave of American planes 63 miles out. Yamato's crew rushed to battle stations. In a final irony, the battleship designed for surface combat carried 162 anti-aircraft guns added during desperate refits, more than many ships built specifically for air defense. But quantity couldn't overcome the fundamental problem. Ships moved in 2 dimensions while aircraft operated in 3. The Americans had learned from experience, particularly from sinking Yamato's sister Musashi, which had required 17 bombs and 19 torpedoes. This time, they would be more efficient. The attack commenced at 12:37 p.m. with methodical precision. Unlike the chaotic attacks on Musashi, the assault on Yamato followed a careful plan. Dive bombers from USS Bennington and USS Hornet suppressed anti-aircraft fire, while torpedo planes concentrated on the port side to induce listing. Avengers approached from multiple angles, forcing Yamato into constant evasive maneuvers that spoiled her anti-aircraft aim. The first wave scored 1 torpedo hit to port and 2 bomb strikes. Yamato's speed dropped to 22 knots. The second wave arrived at 1:33 p.m. Now the Americans pressed attacks to point-blank range, some releasing torpedoes at just 500 yards. Lieutenant Commander Herbert Hauck, leading VBF-9 from USS Yorktown, watched Yamato's entire starboard side erupt in anti-aircraft fire. Orange tracers filled the sky while 46-centimeter beehive shells exploded overhead like black chrysanthemums. But the outcome was never in doubt. 300 aircraft against 1 ship, even the mightiest ship ever built, could only end one way. By 2 p.m., Yamato had taken at least 7 torpedo hits, mostly to port. Counter-flooding had corrected the list twice, but at terrible cost. Hundreds of sailors were trapped in flooded compartments, their sacrifice buying minutes, not victory. The electrical systems failed. Communications broke down. Steering control was lost when a torpedo jammed the rudder hard to port. Fires raged amidships. Still, the attacks continued. American pilots later reported that Yamato looked like a wounded whale, trailing oil, listing heavily, circling helplessly. The world's most sophisticated battleship had been reduced to a barely controllable target. At 2:02 p.m., with the list exceeding 15 degrees, Admiral Ito cancelled the operation by signal flag. The radios were dead. Captain Aruga ordered abandon ship, but the order came too late for most. Sailors on the high side couldn't reach the water. Those on the low side were trapped by the increasing angle. The death blow came from an unexpected quarter. As Yamato capsized to port, her starboard side rose from the water, exposing the unarmored hull bottom. Yorktown's torpedo planes, their weapons reset for shallow runs, put multiple Mark 13 torpedoes into this vulnerable area. At 2:20 p.m., as Yamato rolled past 90 degrees, the unthinkable happened. Forward magazines detonated in a cataclysmic explosion. A pillar of flame rose 6,000 feet into the sky. The mushroom cloud was visible from Kyushu, 100 miles away. The blast was so powerful it reportedly destroyed several American aircraft observing the sinking. Of Yamato's 3,332 crew, only 269 survived. Admiral Ito chose to go down with his ship, retiring to his cabin. Captain Aruga lashed himself to the binnacle. The architects of the mission paid with their lives for their faith in obsolete doctrine. The statistics told a stark truth. Task Force 58 launched 386 aircraft in 2 waves. They scored 11 to 13 torpedo hits and 6 to 7 bomb strikes. American losses: 10 aircraft, 12 men. Japanese losses: battleship Yamato, light cruiser Yahagi, destroyers Asashimo, Hamikaze, Isokaze, and Kasumi, 4,137 men. The exchange ratio revealed the revolution in naval warfare. Mitch's carriers had destroyed the world's most powerful surface combatant while remaining over the horizon, never coming within 200 miles of Yamato's reach. Those magnificent Type 94 guns, capable of accurate fire at 25 miles, were useless against enemies striking from 300 miles away. The geometry of power had shifted decisively. Carriers projected force at the distance their aircraft could fly and return. Battleships could only project power at the distance their shells could travel. In the three-dimensional warfare of 1945, surface ships without air cover were not warships, but targets waiting to die. The sinking marked more than the loss of a ship. It was the funeral of an entire conception of naval warfare. Japan had built the ultimate expression of battleship design precisely as that era ended. The resources consumed by Yamato and Musashi could have produced a fleet of carriers or scores of desperately needed destroyers and submarines. The specialized steel in their armor could have built hundreds of aircraft. The funds spent on their construction and operation could have trained thousands of pilots. Every decision in Yamato's design reflected assumptions about naval combat that were already obsolete when her keel was laid in 1937. The tragedy encompassed more than the 3,063 men who died with her. It was that their deaths accomplished nothing, sacrificed to validate a doctrine that history had already refuted. American officers studying the battle reached unsparing conclusions. Despite her numerous anti-aircraft guns, Yamato's air defense was fundamentally flawed. Her 25mm guns were based on a French Hotchkiss design from the 1930s, inadequate against modern aircraft. The fire control systems, sophisticated for surface engagement, couldn't effectively track fast-moving aircraft. Most damning Japanese naval doctrine still emphasized decisive battle between battle lines, even as carrier aviation made such engagements impossible. Captain Joseph Bryan, intelligence officer for Admiral Mitchell, summarized bluntly, "They built yesterday's perfect weapon for tomorrow's war." The aftermath reinforced the totality of the transformation. Japanese naval officers taken prisoner expressed shock at American carrier operations. They had believed carrier aviation required perfect weather and calm seas. Watching Task Force 58 launch strikes in rough conditions, at night, in rain, shattered these assumptions. The Americans had industrialized naval aviation, turning what Japanese considered an elite art into routine operations. Plane handlers on American carriers could spot and launch a deck load faster than Japanese crews could load and fire battleship guns. Where Japanese naval aviation relied on individual skill, American carrier operations emphasized system efficiency. Industrial methods won modern wars. Yamato's survivors faced bitter reality upon returning to Japan. Ensign Yoshida, pulled from the oil-covered water after 2 hours, returned to a nation that could barely feed its people while America commanded the seas. The steel in one of Yamato's turrets could have built essential infrastructure. Her construction cost could have modernized entire industries. Instead, Japan had built floating monuments to obsolete thinking. The survivors knew what their leaders refused to acknowledge. Japan lost the war the moment it prioritized battleships over aircraft carriers. They had witnessed the future of naval warfare, and it flew at 300 knots. The impact on Japanese naval leadership was shattering. Yamato embodied Yamato Damashi, the Japanese spirit. Her very name meant great harmony, the ancient name for Japan itself. To lose her to aircraft without effectively engaging enemy ships destroyed institutional faith. The gun club admirals who had championed her construction fell silent. There were no more arguments about the superiority of big guns over aircraft. The evidence lay beneath 1,000 feet of water in the East China Sea. The 67 midshipmen of Etajima Naval Academy class number 74, removed from Yamato before her final sortie, would never command battleships. That future had vanished with their ship. Technical analysis revealed deeper flaws. The Type 94 guns, marvels of engineering, had fundamental limitations for anti-aircraft use. Maximum elevation of 45 degrees prevented engaging dive bombers at steep attack angles. Slow traverse rates couldn't match aircraft speeds. The Sanshiki beehive shells, while psychologically impressive, were tactically worthless, essentially massive shotgun shells that aircraft easily avoided. Training emphasized precision fire at distant surface targets, not rapid engagement of multiple aerial threats. Every strength for surface combat became a weakness against air attack. America had entered a new era while Japan perfected weapons for the old. American innovation had made Yamato obsolete before her commissioning. While Japan perfected armor-piercing shells, America developed proximity fuses that revolutionized anti-aircraft fire. While Japan built thicker armor, America created aerial torpedoes dropped at higher speeds from greater altitudes. While Japan trained elite gun crews, America mass-produced competent pilots. The technological gap wasn't merely quantitative, but represented different approaches to warfare. Task Force 58's pilots knew they were hunting a relic. Some felt genuine regret watching Yamato's death throes. She was magnificent, but irrelevant, like a samurai facing machine guns. In broader context, Yamato's fate paralleled Japan's entire war effort. Both represented faith over analysis, tradition over innovation, spirit over logistics. Japanese planners believed superior will could overcome material disadvantages. They built perfect individual weapons, while America built effective systems. Task Force 58 could lose dozens of aircraft and replace them within days. Japan could never replace Yamato. The Americans understood what Japanese admirals refused to accept. In industrial warfare, production capacity mattered more than unit superiority. Better to have many good carriers than one perfect battleship. Victory went to the nation that could put the most planes over the target, not the one with the biggest guns. Naval colleges worldwide studied Yamato's demise intensively. The lessons were clear. No armor could protect against aerial attack. No gun could engage enemies beyond visual range. No ship could survive without air cover. Future naval forces would center on carriers, with every other vessel serving to protect and enable flight operations. Battleships would become floating artillery for shore bombardment, never again arbiters of naval supremacy. Young officers learned that technological revolution could invalidate centuries of tradition in a single generation. The 46-centimeter gun, pinnacle of naval artillery development, had become as obsolete as the ram. The Yamato Museum in Kure now displays a detailed 1:10 scale model of the great ship. Visitors marvel at her size and complexity, while the museum honestly addresses her strategic failure. Display cases show American carrier aircraft, explaining the transformation of naval warfare. Japanese schoolchildren learn that Yamato represented both engineering triumph and strategic disaster, a cautionary tale about preparing for the last war. The museum's most eloquent exhibit is a simple chart showing Yamato's one-way track to her grave, overlaid with the positions of American carriers staying safely beyond gun range. The geometry tells everything. Veterans of Task Force 58 remembered the attack with mixed emotions. Commander Hugh Winters of Air Group 17 wrote, "We knew they were doomed from the moment they left port. No air cover, insufficient fuel, sailing in daylight on a known course. It was an execution, not a battle." The ease of victory troubled some pilots. Yorktown's action report noted Yamato's anti-aircraft fire was intense but ineffective, an epitaph for the battleship era. One pilot observed that attacking Yamato felt like bombing a city that shoots back. The metaphor captured the paradox: unprecedented firepower made helpless by technological change. The tactical lessons became standard curriculum. Yamato's main battery, maximum range 42 kilometers, rate of fire 1.5 rounds per minute, total broadside weight 13 tons. Task Force 58's strike capability, combat radius 500 plus kilometers, sortie rate 2 to 3 strikes per day, ordnance delivered exceeding 100 tons per strike. The equations were irrefutable. Carriers multiplied force through range and repetition. Battleships were limited by physics and geography. In modern warfare, altitude meant advantage. Every meter of height translated to kilometers of reach. Yamato's guns couldn't engage what they couldn't elevate to hit. American dive bombers attacked from angles that made return fire impossible. Defeat was designed into the very geometry of the weapons. Post-war interviews revealed institutional blindness. Even after Midway, Philippine Sea, and Leyte Gulf, many Japanese officers believed in battleship supremacy until Yamato sank. Admiral Matome Ugaki, who survived the war, admitted, "We prepared to fight the Battle of Jutland." The Americans prepared for a war we couldn't imagine. The Imperial Navy expected a 20th century Tsushima. They got instead a preview of 21st century warfare. Captain Tamechi Hara wrote that watching Yamato sink was like watching the samurai age disappear beneath the waves. The metaphor was precise. Yamato represented continuity with centuries of naval tradition. Her killers represented complete rupture with that past. The greatest irony was that Admiral Yamamoto, who planned Pearl Harbor and understood carrier warfare, had argued against Yamato's construction. He wanted more carriers, more aircraft, more pilots. The Naval General Staff insisted on battleships. They got the ships they wanted and lost the war because of them. Yamamoto died in 1943, shot down by American fighters, never seeing his fears fully realized. His successors learned too late what he had known. In modern war, information and aviation mattered more than armor and guns. The Harvard-educated admiral who understood American industrial capacity might have built a different navy. Instead, Japan built monuments to obsolete thinking. Today, Yamato rests in two main sections on the seafloor, split by her magazine explosion. The forward section sits upright, the imperial chrysanthemum crest still visible. The stern lies inverted, revealing fatal torpedo damage. She is simultaneously a war grave, a monument, and a warning. Naval architects study her design to understand both excellence and irrelevance. Her Type 94 guns, supreme achievement of naval artillery, point at nothing. Fish swim through turrets that never found worthy targets. Armor designed to defeat the heaviest shells couldn't stop aerial torpedoes weighing 1/20th as much. Fire control computers of extraordinary sophistication calculate solutions for battles that will never come. She is perfectly preserved and perfectly useless. Modern Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force officers visit the wreck site annually, honoring the courage of her crew while acknowledging the futility of their sacrifice. Young officers learn that technology and doctrine must evolve together, that perfect execution of obsolete concepts guarantees defeat. Yamato possessed the world's most powerful naval guns when naval guns no longer determined victory. She was the answer to yesterday's question, the solution to an extinct problem. Her guns could destroy any ship within range. No enemy ship ever needed to enter that range again. The transformation was complete and irreversible. Where battleship admirals saw gun caliber as destiny, carrier admirals saw aircraft range as possibility. Where Japan built individual superiority, America built systematic supremacy. Where Yamato represented the perfection of traditional surface warfare, the American fast carriers represented its complete replacement. The last battleship to sortie against carriers had met the future of naval power. The result was preordained. On April 7, 1945, American carrier aircraft proved what airpower advocates had long proclaimed. The reign of the gun had ended, the age of the wing had begun. Commander Mitsuru Yoshida's observation from Yamato's bridge contained the entire lesson of modern warfare. Those specks growing larger weren't targets for the great guns, but their executioners. The future arrived at 300 knots, released torpedoes from impossible angles, and returned to ships that surface vessels could never reach. The Imperial Japanese Navy had built history's ultimate battleship at the precise moment battleships became irrelevant. They perfected the past while America invented the future. And so Yamato died as she had lived, impressive, outdated, and firing at aircraft with guns designed to sink battleships, a 72,000-ton testament to the danger of fighting tomorrow's war with yesterday's weapons. Her massive Type 94 guns, the most powerful naval rifles ever sent to sea, had proven completely, utterly, catastrophically useless against American air power. The age of the battleship was over. The age of the carrier had begun. The proof lay beneath 1,000 feet of Pacific water, where the mightiest battleship ever built rested with her silent guns pointed at nothing, forever.